and you answered, we listened, and we're focusing this year on topics of health and well-being. We want you to engage in these webcasts, and we hope these webcasts bring the community closer together and give you the tools you need to focus on your well-being. I hope you enjoy what we have in store for you. Today's event is a great one. It's about being well with chronic illness. I'd like to introduce our two speakers, authors Hill and Nancy Peate. They wrote this fantastic book. Hill right now is in Southern California in the middle of all these storms, so she may freeze up or be in and out, so we ask your patience on her video feed. And Nancy's feeling a little under the weather. Kat has a degree in public health, nursing, and midwifery. She has worked as an educator, nurse, and midwife, but after her diagnosis of young onset Parkinson's, she has devoted her time as an advocate for persons with chronic illnesses. She's currently an ambassador for the Davis-Finney Foundation and sits on the Patient Advisory Committee for the World's Parkinson's Coalition. She spoke at the World's Parkinson's Congress in Kyoto, Japan in 2019, and she has a podcast, Peate Lemonade, as well as written the author of this book. Now, Nancy writes and speaks about wellness and how to live one's best life despite chronic illness. A research librarian by profession, research's topics of most interest include resilience and chronic illness, particularly Parkinson's disease. She has participated and volunteered with the Parkinson's Resources of Oregon, the Davis-Finney Foundation, and the World Parkinson's Coalition. She spoke at the World Parkinson's Congress in Kyoto, Japan, and so as well. And I assume you will be back at the Congress in Barcelona. I am now going to hand this over to you, Kat and Nancy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Amy. Great.
Thanks, Amy.
Here we are.
So if I start cutting out, I'm going to take off my video, just so you know. And I hope I'm coming through okay. Nance, can you hear me okay?
It's coming through just fabulous. I can hear you very well, even in that storm.
Yeah, it's pretty clear behind me right now, but boy, it was stormy last night. So, well, thank you all for coming out today to take a listen to a little bit about Nancy and I's journey with our book, Being Well with Chronic Illness. It came out in October, and it was a very exciting process for us to be able to launch this together. And today's challenges with video stuff and health stuff and storms is a good example of what we get to traverse and show resilience through, huh, Nance?
That's a perfect example of why we wanted to write a book, because we wanted to think about what does it take?
What does it take? What does it take? So today we're going to share both the journey. We get asked a lot, how did you write a book together and what was that process like? So we're going to cover that. And we're going to talk also about the book, and we'll have time at the end to have some discussion about the book as well. So that's sort of our format. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to type something in the chat, and we'll get it answered. So Katrina, go ahead and advance that slide for us. Let's see. There we go. We feel like being here today is a real honor to start off a new year. New Year's is often a time for us to kind of take stock about our lives from the previous year and maybe set out some intentions or maybe make some goals for the New Year's. I'm not a big New Year's resolution person, but I do think a New Year's is a good time to sort of take stock, and we hope that our book might be something included and maybe part of what you'll think about for the new year. We talk about lots of ways and share some tools that have been helpful for us in our journeys with living with and living well with Parkinson's disease. Our book is written through the Parkinson's disease lens, but it lends itself to anybody going through a major transition. Nance, don't you think? What do you
Yeah,
think about that? Are you a New Year's resolution person, Nancy?
I've been writing in my gratitude journal a little bit more than I usually do, and that seems to be at the beginning of the year. But I have just like on the left side of the page, things I'm grateful for. And every day I try to put a couple things I'm grateful for. And then on the other side, this is really kind of hokey, is things I like about myself. Because we
Oh,
don't
those are
always talk
great.
about,
Affirmations.
right, what is it that I like rather than what do other people see in me?
And in our book, we talk a lot about how words matter and talking kindly about
Mhm.
ourselves to ourselves is probably the most important way that we can bring wellness into our own lives, describing our own journeys. So anyway, we hope you'll take a peek, and we hope you will be well this year. Next slide.
There we go. Look at those scary boxers. That's Kat and me at our exercise class. It's the book does a lot of telling our Parkinson's stories. I was diagnosed in 2014, so I've been doing this a little while. At the time, I was a children's librarian, and I really loved it. But that's what gave me the impetus to see that I had something wrong with my arms, because I was raising my hands. I talk about this in the book. I was raising my hands, and I could see my reflection, and they weren't matching what I thought they were. So I took off to talk to a neurologist. And since then, I have continued working as a librarian. Now, in the last 2 years, I'm retired now, so I have a whole new idea of what life is about. And some of the things I'm doing, I'm really interested in genealogy and DNA, what we're finding out, the stories your family told you versus the stories your DNA tells us. And I'm also interested in birding. I'm a bird watcher. And a wife and a mom.
Yeah.
And a friend of Kat's. Looks like she's frozen for just a second. Oh, good. I get to talk about Kat. No, here she is.
There, I think you can see me. Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
All right. I was diagnosed at the age of 48 and had been having symptoms like so many people for a few years prior. And so I've been living with Parkinson's now for almost 10 years. I was diagnosed in 2015, and at the time was working as the director of midwifery in a big inner city hospital in Portland. I was taking care of my mother, who was battling her third cancer, and also a mother. I had teenagers at home. So when Nancy and I met, we had a lot in common. We were both young, we were both parents of teenagers, and we had both been newly diagnosed with Parkinson's. Next slide.
And the other thing I would say is we were both looking for community.
We both were, yes.
Of the World Parkinson's Congress.
Yeah. This is what we looked like after we met. No, just kidding. This was in 2016. The World Parkinson Congress really played an integral role in Nancy and I setting some new goals for ourselves after our diagnosis. This is us. We were participating with our boxing dance group, actually, a offshoot of our boxing group. We performed Thriller at the opening ceremonies of the World Parkinson Congress in Portland. And we looked pretty scary. We thought we had professional makeup artists do our makeup. And this is about midway through, I think. It's even scarier. But what was powerful for us here was that we went to, what do you say, Nancy? We went to the Congress looking for information, and what we found was our people, was our community.
Our people, right.
And we found powerful messages.
I would never have guessed that I would dance in front of a really, really large convention. But, I was with a lot of people that were doing it. We were made up and we were having a great time, and it didn't matter to me. So finding your people really makes a big difference.
And we know, and the literature really supports, that having a community that is supportive is vital to maintaining wellness. And so if you're looking for your people, maybe some of your new year can involve reaching out to the community. I know you all that are tuned in right now are already doing that, but maybe that can be a part of how you get connected if you're not connected already. So this is sort of early in our journey. We went to the WPC and then we started attending some of the conferences also after we had performed and gotten all this makeup off. And we got very excited about what we saw as people living well with Parkinson's, and we felt like maybe we had something to contribute to it. And so we set a goal to try to put together a presentation for the next World Congress that was going to be in Japan. Next slide.
I remember when we walked in and walked down one of the hallways, there was a photography exhibit. This is at the 2016 World Parkinson's, and it was Faces of Parkinson's. And there were all of these people that looked just like us. And
just like us.
It was wonderful. Here we look different. So here's us in Japan.
Here's us in Japan. So Nancy and I put together between really right after the 2016 Congress, we started talking about what might we have to contribute to the discussion at the next World Congress. And we decided we wanted to talk about resilience. And there was a lot being written about it. It's a term that probably many of you have heard about. And we put together a presentation and we started hosting events in our homes.
I think we did 6 different kind of event party-ish events, and then we would do our presentation, and then afterwards people that we invited would tell us what hit home with them and what didn't. So it was really a useful experience to talk in front of people that knew us.
And in some ways it was even harder, huh, Nance? It's sometimes easier to be anonymous when you speak, but getting feedback from people that we knew, loved, and respected was, it was a powerful process. So it really helped us to hone in on, first and foremost, what we thought might be valuable to ourselves to learn more about. And secondly, what did we feel like we could bring to the community? So we were very lucky to be a part of the WPC in Kyoto, Japan. And in the slide on the left-hand side of the screen with us with what's his name? Yeah, it's the raccoon is Parky the raccoon. These are our friends Claudia and Michelle, both of whom are featured in our book. Each chapter we feature somebody who is one of our friends and other women and people that inspire us to be resilient. And these women have stories. Yeah, go ahead. Amazing stories.
Each one, when you look at it, you start reading, you think, oh, here's just another person. And then you read what kinds of challenges they've had in their lives and what kinds of interests they have. It's amazing.
And how resilient they are.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. All right. And then that's us on the big screen. What I'd like to add is one more piece is that our community from Portland came out and supported us in droves. We had just a whole bunch of people in the audience when we were in Japan. And it was one of my highlights of my entire life to look out from that stage to see friends from home attending our talk. So
yes, what an experience to look out and see them. They were just sitting waiting for it to begin. They were like, we're here.
Yeah,
we're here to support you guys. It was wonderful.
Right. Next slide. While we were at the Congress, Nancy, I'll let you tell the story. We're walking down the hallway. It may have been like right after that picture was taken even.
Yeah, a woman was coming up towards us in the hallway and she said, oh no, I missed your talk. And, we were kind of being gracious. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. And she said, well, it's okay. I told myself I would just read your book. And I remember we kind of stopped, like, our book, that's right, we're going to write a book. And within like a week after we got back, we had started outlining a book. I don't know who she was.
We wish we knew who it was because we'd thank her. It was, we also gave a roundtable talk at the World Parkinson Congress. And for those of you that haven't gone or are contemplating going, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's a unique gathering of clinicians, people with Parkinson's, caregivers, researchers, and supportive clinicians, rehab specialists, that all come together. Drug reps, yes, absolutely. Pharmaceutical companies that come together to focus on Parkinson's disease. And it can be life-changing. So when we came home from Kyoto, Nancy and I wanted to keep working together. We were working out regularly together. We boxed 3 to 4 early mornings a week.
And by early morning, we mean 6:30. That was early.
6:30 a.m. We did. We got up early, and our reward was that we could go get coffee one day a week after boxing. And so we started to write our book and outline our book at a coffee shop right after boxing.
Yes.
So the book is based on our talk in Kyoto. That's the leaping off point. Nancy and I love working together. We have complementary strengths. Nancy is such a good researcher and great at the data. And I was trying to grow my advocacy work and my work as a clinician and how that transitions to being a person living with a chronic illness. We felt like maybe we had a unique perspective. We were also both women who were young, who had Parkinson's. And that story hadn't been told.
I'm looking at the 4th bullet point on here. We pretty early on were contacted by a woman who was in one of our exercise classes, and she just said, "I want to know more about your project." And I hadn't met her before, and I don't know if Kat had, but she kind of hung around, and then finally she said, "Do you know what I did in my real life before I retired?" I was like, "No." She said, "I was a managing editor at a really large publishing house, and I believe so strongly in your project. I want to help you with it." Well, you can imagine
that was really
a
turning point for us, because
yeah.
It wasn't just people that we know and loved saying, "Oh, we like your message." It was Eve believing in us and feeling like there was a place for us and our message in the broader world. We also, at the time, were facilitating, Nancy and I and my husband, Ken, a group for young onset that focused very much on wellness. And even though both Nancy and I feel strongly that there is an element of loss and grief with any diagnosis, it is, and it's important to honor that and work through that. We really believe, and the literature again really supports, that you can change the way you feel about yourself and your health by practicing thinking about it. Practice writing it down. Practice writing a book about it. Practice talking about it on the internet. You really can change the way you feel about your health. It doesn't mean that you don't have Parkinson's anymore, but you can live a healthy, full, engaged, vibrant life with a diagnosis. It just may be different than how it looked before the diagnosis.
Right. We don't mean to say that we never have off days, because we certainly do. And we've had lots of grief and we've had lots of rabbit hole days. But we believe that you can come back from that. And the more often you do it, the easier it gets to come up and find what you need to start living a well life again.
Those neural pathways, right, Nancy? And the neuroplasticity. Many of you have probably heard that term, the laying down of pathways in your brain. The more often, and those pathways can be thoughts, they can be words, they can be the story that we tell ourselves. And the more often we use that repeating thought, the easier it gets to return to. I also want to put a little nod into both the Bryant Grant Foundation, Parkinson's Resources of Oregon, and the Davis Phinney Foundation, all of whom have been so supportive of our message and our the work that we've been doing. So we don't want to forget to thank all of those folks. Next slide.
Here we go.
So
one of the lessons we learned about publishing a book is patience. It takes a long time to publish a book. And we were surprised at how each step had its own time. I wrote down a timeline of how long it took us from the WPC in Tokyo. That was in July 2019. Eve, our editor, started working with us in December 2019. We had a major reorganization with our friend Carrie Ray in February 2020. And then the best part is a publisher, Hatherley Press, expressed interest in us in March 2021. We started working towards a June release date, 2022. And our published date was October 18th, 2022. So that's really quite recent.
Yeah, so a little over 3 years from the start of writing until actually having a book in our hands. We did not use an agent. We had discussed it. Some people will hire an agent once they have part of the manuscript done. We chose to go online and submit applications to publishers that were accepting submissions. What I will say about this process was that it was like writing a college essay for different colleges. Each of them asked different questions and required different submissions. So it wasn't like you just cut and pasted, what we tried last week. And we submitted, how many, Nance, would you say?
I think around 15. And it was a lot of work. I mean, we didn't just phone them in. We spent a lot of time saying why this publisher would be a good fit for us and what other books we think are out there in the field right now and what other competitive books are out there. We learned a lot.
So it was interesting. We did. We learned a lot doing it, and part of what we learned was that that process was more took longer and took more neural pathways laid down than we anticipated. Also, it was interesting to learn that publishers wanted to know what kind of resources we had to market our own book. And a lot of that stemmed around what kind of social media platforms, how we thought we could get the word out. And so we tried to develop those avenues as well.
Both of us are first-time authors, so we're just learning our way through this every step.
Yes.
That's a new step for us too.
And Hatherley Press has been just wonderful to work with. They have taken all of our input and feedback very in stride and used our feedback about our book cover and our title, and the editing process I thought went very smoothly. So we felt very good about working with them.
They're just a really good fit for us because they publish a lot of books on wellness and they publish a lot of books on different illnesses and how you get through them. So we fit pretty well right in.
We did. Next slide. Now we want to talk a little bit about the book getting here and what the book is, which is why so many of you have come. That's Nancy and I seeing each other for the first time with the book. It was sort of like having a new baby arrive, 3 years in the making. So there were supply chain delays for us. Like, I don't know if Nancy mentioned that our book was due out in June. And it didn't come out until October, and that was those were related very much to printing delays. And there were times where we did wonder, will it really happen?
Right.
Is there really a book coming? But then it comes, and we feel we feel good about it, and we're very excited to share also that Hatherley Press will be doing another printing of the book this year. So we feel like that's a good sign that people are reading it and sharing it. It is available both in hardcover. Well, hardcover. It's not I guess it's available as a real book, but not a hardcover. It's a soft cover, and also in digital format. A lot of people have asked if it's available as an audiobook, and it's not yet. It's something that Nancy and I are interested in pursuing if the publisher is. So I want you to know that we've heard the feedback, and we're hoping to make an audiobook available. If you want to go look at it in person, you can find them at most Barnes and Noble. But you can also get them at any online bookseller. So Powell's, Amazon. Anyway, that's our pitch.
I have an additional pitch to add, which is a close friend of ours bought several copies, and she sent them out at Christmas. And what she said on them is, "This is my life." She wrote that to her friends. "Please read this. This is my life."
Wow, that's powerful. That's yeah. And we think it's particularly well suited for somebody who's newly diagnosed with any chronic illness. But we also have had friends give feedback that they found some tools that have been diagnosed for a while. So it may just be a fresh perspective. We do not claim to have all the answers, do we, Nancy?
I think we don't. Yeah.
No,
if I
we
recall.
don't. We don't. These are just tools that have worked for us. So next slide.
So one of the things our publisher first talked to us about was this spiral, the wellness spiral, and asked if it was original to us. And we said yes. You can't see it because our faces are covering it up, and it's in color in the back of our book.
I'm going to show them. It's a model that we developed. Bring it closer, Nance. To your screen. More. There you go. So it's in color. You can see it. We've got it in black and white here. And what it does is it shows our model for wellness. And Nancy and I brainstormed a lot about models. And we really were inspired after hearing Dr. Sonia Mather talk about the pyramid, the advocacy pyramid. She presented that at the World Parkinson Congress in Kyoto, and it started off with community and kind of ended up at the top of this pyramid doing advocacy work. It's a great model, but we didn't feel like it was a model that reflected health as much, and we wanted to talk about our own journey of sort of empowerment and wellness, and we wanted the good stuff at the top to be big. And not the tiny triangle. So the spiral is meant to be something that you go up and down all the time. It's not that you move out of one part of the spiral into another and then stay there. Even in a day's time, you can go from down the rabbit hole, which is the space that we all are familiar with, that fear and worry and grief and depression, all the way up to the top, which is where you're well and living a life that intentionally supports your wellness and your health.
If you look at the spiral, you'll see that it's an original watercolor that Kat did, and we liked the messiness of it. We wanted this to be a messy model. It had a lot of room in it for people to move in lots of different directions. What did you start to say, Kat?
I was going to say it's messy like our lives are. There's not a linear up and down. So I'm going to just sort of go through the spiral a little bit. That we talked about down the rabbit hole. We like that term because it's an easy place to get lost and stay around and around in. And that can be, if you're in that low place, sometimes you just need some reminders to get out of it. And many people at a crossroads or at a diagnosis end up down that rabbit hole, and we're trying to give you some ideas about how to get out of it. Compassion for yourself is a big next step.
This one's my favorite one. The others are great, but this one, it never fails me when things are feeling low, when somebody tells me that they're having a low point. This is the step I would go to, and that's find ways to express compassion towards yourself and the people in your lives. And that might be nutrition, finding food that is healthy for you, or it might mean keeping a new journal, or it might be watercoloring. There's just a lot that comes under the umbrella of compassion.
Even giving yourself grace and saying, you know, I'm
Yeah.
having a tough day today, but gosh, I'm going to try to get up tomorrow and give myself some time to ease into that
Yeah.
next day.
Yeah.
We touched a little on community and how important that is, and that is vital. We know that loneliness now is more detrimental to one's health statistically than smoking cigarettes. And if COVID didn't hit anything home, that's sure a big one. So finding your people and being able to reach out to them, especially in times of despair, it's very
Yes.
important. Those people in the blue zones, which are people living over 100 years old, there's pockets of these communities around the world, and they call it the blue zones, where there are a lot of people that live past 100. And they found that these communities have in common this sense of belonging. It's not just a diet. It's not just
Right.
sunshine and good air. Really, it's about being connected with other people. So it really is vital to our well-being, and can be the foundation for finding true joy and contentment.
I love that.
Thanks, Nance. Another vital part to being well is to being able to reach out to others. And I know for me, being involved in this community has lent me the opportunity to hear other people's stories and to get outside of my own process. And sometimes the best thing I can do to remember that I'm not alone is to call somebody in my community. I have had an opportunity to talk to a lot of newly diagnosed people. Nancy has too, in our support groups, and through the work we do. And it really does help to be part of something bigger, especially when it's so easy to isolate and feel lonely when you're not feeling well. So we hope this model may fit for you. And next slide. And it may not, but we do try.
Yes. Look at that book.
And
This
that's
is
a
an
for real
exciting
one of our
day.
books. Yeah.
Spotted in the wild.
In the wild in Southern California. My cousin sent this to me. She actually had found it at a bookstore, and that was very exciting. And again, I think we shared who we think is our target audience for this book. There are some great stories in it. We've got, in terms of reviews, people that we actually don't know and aren't related to have left some nice reviews, which is exciting. We love the ones left by the people we love and know, but we're getting good feedback about it, that it's a usable tool. It's also nice, small, bite-sized pieces. It's not an overwhelming volume of about Parkinson's disease. We try to pepper in a fair amount of research and current literature about disease and also about wellness. And we also include stories about people that we find inspiring, and you've seen some photographs of them in our presentation today. We are hoping to be in Barcelona, Japan, in Barcelona, Spain, at the World Congress this year in July, we're hoping to have our book in the book nook there, and hope to give some talks there.
Yeah.
So that is who we are. Nancy, what do you have? I kind of dominated that last slide. Any thoughts?
No, I think we're good. We have a point that it's ideal for those newly diagnosed, but I've heard from lots of people that it's useful even if you're further down the road, because there's always these same kinds of issues that you deal with, that community helps you with, and compassion helps you with, and finding ways to be well, whether you're recently diagnosed or later on.
We do add in each chapter also a few points about pausing to reflect.
Yeah.
And those folks have found that helpful, just a time to look at a prompt, like maybe thinking about things a little differently, or what other words might I choose in describing my health or wellness, or how, in other ways, how might I describe my diagnosis also, kind of how to make those subtle shifts that really can contribute to wellness. So gosh, we thank you so much for your for tuning in and for thinking about us. And I'm going to try to turn my video back on, but Amy, why don't you come join us and maybe we can take some questions.
There she is.
Thank you so much, you guys. First of all, I want to say I really enjoyed the book. I think you make dealing with chronic illness less daunting, and you were able to explain things that I was already thinking or feeling. So it gave me permission to do some things that I was thinking, and you were able to verbalize some of my feelings. So thank you so much for doing what you did. My first question to you guys is, what did you discover about yourselves going through this process? What was something that maybe surprised you?
I'll start. One of the things that it took a great commitment to write a book. You know, you have to stick with it, but we had already committed ourselves to going to exercise class, to being part of our community, and the book was just a piece of that. It didn't stand by itself. So that's one thing I learned, is that you have to work with lots of different people throughout the time you're working on a big project. It's funny, we do get a lot of people ask us, how did you work together? And I think they're trying to say, didn't you guys fight?
It was more of, it is a big process. It's, to me, that just seems overwhelming and daunting. I just wanted to, did something surprise you about it, about yourself, I
think what was interesting for me was that we were able to hone down our varied interests into a cohesive project. And because we really had broad interests, we knew that we couldn't do something we weren't interested in because we'd never stick with it for the length. Right. So I was surprised that we didn't have a single disagreement. We really didn't. I mean, it's remarkable.
There were times when we disagreed on something, but then it would be the person who brought it up and cared the most would persuade the other person, and we were pretty persuadable.
Yeah, I think things that we felt strongly about, we were willing to compromise, to make compromises on. And I think having a partner to write with that has different strengths is a good thing, because I think we were very lucky to find each other. And yeah, so part of what surprised me, I think, was also during the pandemic that I really used the model for my self-work, to try to keep myself out of the rabbit hole space. And remembering that I like to say I'm a recovering extrovert. That I need my community, and that it's okay to need my community. And I had to find new new ways to reach out sometimes during COVID, but I think Nancy and I both also shared the model with others, and they found it useful. So I think that was a surprise.
I remember one day Kat saying to me, "This actually really works." It really does.
Well, I love your model, and I want to talk about kind of that spiral a bit. But first, you mentioned in the beginning about honoring that grief process. It's, yes, we want to shift into this joy and shifting our mindset. But first, how do you honor that grief process? Is there something special you do, or do you let the anger consume you? How do you honor that? And then I want to ask, how long did it take you to shift that mindset? Was there an event, or was it conscious, or were you always joyful?
Okay, I'll start with that one, Nance.
Okay.
So I was born an optimist. Okay, so I'm going to lay that premise. When I was diagnosed, it a lot of trouble working. Am I there?
You cut out real quick.
Okay, am I back? Is it worth pursuing, or okay?
It's worth pursuing.
Okay, I left. I slept on the couch for about 6 weeks. I was really low, and I realized that I had been.
Oh, we lost you again.
And if I wanted to continue to raise a child with a chronic illness, I could not stay on the couch.
Okay.
So I needed to get off the couch and make a choice. And if I stayed on the couch, Parkinson's, I stopped defining who I was and let Parkinson's win. So I hope you caught most of that. I'm sorry.
I think we did. We did.
Yeah. The same question. What did we learn?
Well, either how do you honor the grief process? Because I think that's something that I struggle with. Is I always want to keep this joyful, positive attitude, but you're going to spiral back down. So how do I make it purposeful and beneficial and still honor that?
Right. I was thinking about when I was first diagnosed, I didn't tell anybody, and that was my method of dealing with the grief to start with. Is I hid it, and I thought it was important to hide. I thought I would probably lose my job, and I would have trouble figuring out who I was, and then it turned out to be it was a secret, just not worth keeping. That as soon as I started telling people, I realized, one, they weren't judging, and they were wanting to support me. And telling my boss, that was the same kind of thing. She was like, "Okay, what do you need?" And I thought, wow, I hid this for a long time.
Yeah, it's sharing was a huge weight off my shoulders too.
Yeah.
In your book, you talk
I also think small steps. Oops, sorry. Can I add one last thing?
Of course.
A gratitude practice. A gratitude practice can be a very simple way to slowly get from grief to acceptance, and remembering that we have things in our lives we can be grateful for, even if it's just that the lights turn on and the garbage gets picked up. Some days that's as simple as it gets.
I love that you bring that up, because I have a question on that. That's something in the past year I've challenged myself to do, is stop being so angry at Parkinson's and shifting it and saying, what am I thankful for with Parkinson's? Why am I grateful for it? So I wanted to ask you, is there something about Parkinson's that you're grateful for?
There's a lot. I will never say that I am glad I have it, but I'm so grateful for my community and all of the opportunities it's given me.
And how, yeah, go ahead, Kat.
I was just going to say, I got to meet all of you. I am not grateful for Parkinson's, but I am grateful for the things that Parkinson's has brought to my life.
What is your gratitude practice?
Perfect. I was just trying to type that in the chat. I started writing things down on pieces of paper, 3 things a day I was grateful for. And I still to this day try to do that. And that shift of looking for things in my day to be grateful for doesn't leave room for a lot of self-pity. I realized it's replacing some of that energy without trying to the things that I'm grateful for. I promised myself I'd write 3 things down today. I've got to find those 3 things. So and there's good evidence to support that. So it may sound very cliche, but it really does work.
In our book, we have some examples of journaling and some statements of gratitude that have worked for us. Everybody's got a different way, but I think putting pencil on paper or pen on paper really makes a difference.
Or even on your phone.
Even on your phone.
In the book, you discuss creativity. And that is something too, it's funny, my husband even noticed, he's like, gosh, since your diagnosis, you've been more creative. I have this urge and need. And I have so many projects around the house, but there are times when I'm at the bottom of this rabbit hole. Do you have tricks or any tips on how to initiate that and get yourself back to doing some of these creative activities?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to my journal real quick. I'm not a journaler, like I sit down and write sentences. Mine journal is more like lists. But in one part of my journal, I do a quick sketch. And it doesn't have to be, if I can't think of anything else, or I'm feeling too low to do something like sketch my cup or my toothbrush, I just draw shapes and I just say, okay, I'm just going to draw triangles. And so I just draw triangles that day. And it's that alone helps me when I'm at my lowest point to just get that little bit of hit of I can still be creative and make an interesting pattern, even just out of triangles. For me, that works. And that helps to prompt, oh, maybe I'll add a little watercolor to this, or maybe I'll just put some scribbles. But that's an integral part of what I do in a small journal every day, is a small sketch. And it just springboards, helps me to springboard out of that rabbit hole.
I also watercolor, and I leave my watercolor paints all out so that I can just sit down. I used to kind of try to clean up at the end of the day, but now I leave everything out so that I can sit down and just begin. And sitting down.
Does it remind you too, Nance? Does that remind you too, like, oh, there's my watercolors. I should sit and do that. Yeah, I like that.
Well, and it takes kind of that the onus off of initiating something. It's already set out for you, so you don't have to struggle with climbing over that hill to get something started. It's already presented for you.
Right.
Yep, breaking down barriers.
Yeah. I'd like to ask, what is something
what feeds your soul?
Yeah. What would you say to somebody who was just diagnosed, who's in this rabbit hole? What initial steps should they take to start to shift that mindset and get joy in their life?
Well, we've seen a lot of people in that position, and it's hard. And I think empathy is what comes to mind at first. Is a lot of us have had hard times there, and it takes a while to get through it, but people do come through it. And there's a lot of work to be done in that initial first couple of months.
Having compassion for yourself and acknowledging that it's a hard time.
Right.
And getting support. For some of you, that may mean your family. For some of you, that may mean reaching out to a support group. For some of you, that may mean seeking counsel with clergy or counselors, and for some of you, perhaps a spouse or children. But finding your people is an important part of that as well.
That's a great suggestion. What is something that you wished you had heard in the beginning of your diagnosis to help you find this? Is there something that you were craving that you needed to hear?
Absolutely. I wish somebody had been there to give me a hug and say, it's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. And instead it felt really like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. It's different.
I would have liked to have known the other young people, to have had access, and Nancy and I, that's how we found each other and why we started our group, was to have folks in the same stage of life. So I think there are resources growing. I think our book can be a good tool, but there are foundations. If you are in the Pacific Northwest, there's the Bryant Grant Foundation. There's things online, Parkinson's Resources of Oregon, Davis Finney Foundation. There are people out there waiting to support you and to be part of your people. So try not to feel alone.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of this talk, you were mentioning at the World Parkinson's Congress, there were some powerful messages you received. What is that powerful message that inspired you?
I was walking down the hall and some gentleman said, oh, I haven't met any Parkinson's people yet. And I thought, he was a researcher, and I thought, you haven't met anybody with Parkinson's? And I think at that point I was kind of like, wait, I do have something to contribute to this conversation, particularly if there's researchers that aren't meeting us and don't know what it is that we need. So I think that first Congress was just learning that we had a voice, that what we came to offer was important.
I think it was powerful for me to realize that as a lifelong caregiver and nurse, that perhaps my career wasn't completely over, that perhaps I could pivot and still be of service to others, but maybe in a different role, that those of us with Parkinson's can engage and help others with messages, and that we're not alone. That was what was so pivotal for me. I didn't feel as lonely after seeing so many people like me at the Congress.
No, it's an important message to receive and be open to, is that you may not be the person you had planned on being or think you're going to be, but you are going to be who you need to be. And that is, it's something that I think is a nice message and lesson to hear. Humor. You talk about laughter and the importance of that. And that's something that I think I'm a pretty happy person, but there are times I just feel like it's hard to find things funny. So I just what is something that makes you laugh or just full on giggle that just helps you out?
Oh, gosh.
My community makes me laugh a lot. Some of the women that I box with, I can think of a couple in particular.
I can think of one in particular
just crack me up.
Yeah.
Yes. And before I really had found my community, this may sound totally corny, but I would turn on Ellen every day at 2 p.m. It was my low ebb. I was on the couch and I thought, I have got to get myself out of this funk. And I never could get through an entire episode of her show without completely cracking up. And I felt better after it. So I realized early that I have to, and my husband cracks me up too, I gotta say. He keeps me laughing, which is good.
Yeah.
I have to say, Kat, Ellen kind of saved me through my diagnosis too. I would hole up in my bedroom and I would turn it on, and for that hour, I could have laughed.
There was a day in the gym where one of our co-exercisers said that she was feeling really down, and she thought, I don't know what's going to happen. And then Kat and I came in and we were laughing, and she said, if those two can laugh, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's, you just have to laugh. Yeah. It takes so much more energy to be angry and just fight it than it is to just laugh at the silly things of,
Right.
what this is and what this brings to us.
Right.
So, what do you
Yeah.
guys have planned for the future? What can we expect?
I'll let Kat
Well,
answer that.
we have, of course, the beginnings of another book, because Nancy and I like working together, and we feel like there's still areas that we'd like to research and play with. We are going to spend some time together in Spain at the World Parkinson Congress. I'm on the road right now traveling, and I want to stay engaged in this community. And I'm coming back to the Pacific Northwest. So I'll be gone on the road for a couple of years, but then I'll be back.
Real quick, how are you managing your healthcare while you're on the road?
I circle back. I get Botox from my movement disorder specialist in Portland, and we have 2 grown children there. So I'm coming back every 3 months to get healthcare there. It's worth it to me to get it in the right place. Yeah.
Nancy, do you have any future plans or goals other than this book number 2?
I am actively looking at topics for the second book. We've put several ideas out there, and our publisher has said that they're interested in knowing more if we do have some ideas for them. So I think that's where my interests lie in the next year or 2. And going to Barcelona.
Going to Barcelona. Yeah.
One last question before I let you ladies go. Keeping routines is very important into making sure we're able to do all the tasks we need to during the day, the mindfulness, the exercise. How do you keep your routines? And then, Kat, how are you keeping your routine when you're on the road? When things get upset, like summer is hard for me to keep a routine because my kids are home, etc. So how do you keep the routine? And then when life happens, how do you reset it and do it again?
Well, with Zoom classes, I can get my exercise. You can do it when you need to do it, but I don't know I think you just have to be mindful. I have like my Fitbit goes off and my phone goes off, and I have lots of tools, but it's me acting on them that's important.
Yeah, something I found, Amy, being on the road, we are trying to have stay places for at least a couple of weeks, which is helping. The dog has to go for walks. We load up and do our travel routine at about the same time when it's a travel day. And I have alarms on my watch. It takes more energy to stay on top of it when we're changing places. Right now, I'm trying to say that's a good way to grow new neural pathways. And partly why I'm doing it now is because I'm aware of how much energy it takes to do now. So I think right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm taking the opportunity to do it while I can manage my symptoms okay while I'm on the road. I anticipate a day where that's not going to happen. All of us are getting older, and as we age, it gets less easy. So I'm doing it now. Carpe diem.
Exactly. Well, ladies, thank you so much. You are such a joy, and you are wonderful examples of how we can manage this chronic disease and just still do it with a smile on our face and show that, there is so much more to life than Parkinson's, and that we just need to grab it and take advantage of it. So thank you. Everybody else, I'd like to thank you for joining us on our inaugural wellness webcast. We will have an exciting one next month in February, where we are talking to two couples about dating with PD,
Oh my.
how they met. How do you tell somebody you have Parkinson's if you're on the dating scene? So we encourage you to check that out on the events tab on thebriangrant.org. And if you have any questions for them, please feel free to submit those ahead of time. Otherwise, everybody have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.